We made it through the reading. Way to go. I heard someone commenting about how it was 3 pages long, so I'm glad we can make it all the way through. At the front of your bulletins, just like last night, is the final verse of Psalm 22. They will proclaim God's deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying to them, the Lord has acted. Now there's a strong connection between Psalm 22 and the crucifixion story. Some of the words of Psalm 22 are, my God, why have you forsaken me? Words we hear from Jesus, not in this text, but in other texts. They divide my clothing among them. For my clothing they cast lots. We get that in today's text. They mock me and say, if God, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on it, of course. But let God deliver him. If God so loves him, let God take care of it. Right, calling back to, if you're the Messiah, why don't you just save yourself? There's even a part where it says, they pierce my hands and they pierce my feet. This is all in Psalm 22. Now, this isn't Psalm 22 telling you what's going to happen to Jesus. Instead, this is the author of the gospel pointing out the connection that it has with Psalm 22. The torment, the torture, the feeling of being completely given up by God, the feeling of truly being in pain, and how connected it is to our gospel reading today. But again, I want to talk about that last verse. They will proclaim God's deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying to them, the Lord has acted. Talked about last night, and it's the same. Actions speak louder than words. So what kind of actions do we see here? From the human perspective, we see one of Jesus' strongest disciples deny him 3 times because he's scared. We see a group of people take over this innocent man, beat him and mock him for the things he said. We see 2 rulers, one a governor and one the king of the Israelites, both trying to wash their hands of it and not have to deal with it. But in the end, they still sentence him to death. We see brave women following him the whole way, weeping for their Savior and staying by his side. We see a big mix between those strong enough to follow Jesus and those too weak to stick around. Those who betray Jesus and those who continue even to death to praise their God. And then we have Jesus' actions. What does Jesus do? WWJD in this moment. First off, he prays. He prays the same proclamation in the last verse of Psalm 22. He's praying God for deliverance. Lord, don't make me take this cup. What he's saying is, Lord, I know I'm about to be crucified. I know I'm about to die. Is there a different way? But your will be done, if there isn't. And his prayer is actually answered. It's not some big voice from the sky saying, Dear Jesus, no. Instead, he sees Judas. He sees the crowd. He gets his answer. Thy will be done. You will be crucified. You will die for the sake of the world. Now, when someone's dragged away to prison or something, a lot of the times you talk about the action of those dragging him away. But as Christians, and as we read this story, we can hold on to the true action. The action is not that the people led him away. The action is not that the people crucified Jesus. The true action is that Jesus allowed it to happen. even when they tried to defend Jesus, when they tried to uprise, what did he say? We're not going to let this happen. He heals the ear of the slave of the high priest, and he allows himself to be taken. They throw accusations and insults and mocks, and what does he do? He doesn't feed the fire. He doesn't deny their accusations. He says, if you say so. And I think the second criminal truly gets it right. Jesus isn't a bandit. Jesus isn't a criminal. Jesus is purely innocent. Jesus is purely good and faithful. Jesus did nothing wrong. And he allowed himself to die so that out of his purity, we could receive forgiveness. It wasn't just Jesus taking his last breath on the cross. It's an interesting fact, and I've talked with my confirmation kids about it before, that it's funny that Jesus is pure, but as he hung from the cross, he was the most sinful man in all of humanity. The most sinful man we could ever think of, not because of the sins he committed, but because he takes on our sin. Not only did Jesus hang from the cross, but so did every sin in the world. And so does every sin in the world. And for that reason, when we proclaim God's deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying to them, the Lord has acted, we can do it in different ways. Just as I kind of talked about last night, we can do it somberly. Reading that story, it's not a real go-getter. You don't feel super jovial going, oh man, this is fantastic. It's somber. But we can proclaim that the Lord has acted in solemn confidence, in feeling sad and in our grief. And even in our darkest times, we can know that the Lord has also been there, and we can know that the Lord has done all of this for us. And because of that, we also proclaim that the Lord has acted with joy and confidence, knowing that all the sin that we have, all the sin we commit, dies on this cross every day, every second. The Lord has acted. Thanks be to God. We continue with our hymn of the